Good morning, everybody. Welcome to everybody that's online. I'm going to call this public board meeting of May 24th to order. Tasha, can you please do the land acknowledgement?
Sorry, everybody online. Tasha Otway-McClay, Ward 6. I'd like to say that Sturgeon Public Schools respectfully acknowledges that we teach, learn, and grow together on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. We honor and respect the history, languages, ceremonies, and cultures of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who have called this land home for countless generations. We recognize the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Dene, Métis, Nakota Sioux, and Inuit for their care, love, and stewardship of this place. We are grateful for those who share their knowledge with us and help to foster a respectful relationship with all of our relatives on this land. We are committed to understanding the harms done in the name of education and continuing to learn to honor, continuing to learn to honor the true spirit of Treaty 6 as a promise of friendship, collaboration, and peaceful alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? No. Can I get an approval of the agenda? Trish? All in favor? Motion carried. No appointments. Can I get an approval for the minutes of the regular meeting of April 26, 2023? Stacy? All in favor? Unanimous. Approval of the minutes of the organizational meeting from May 8th, 2023. Cindy? All in favor? Carried. We don't have any presentations today. Reports from Senior Exec 7.1 Alberta School Boards Association Awards. Shauna.
Shauna Warren, Superintendent. So shared as information, this is very exciting. So we did have an honorable mention last year, and this year we have two. So for the Alberta School Board Association Honoring Spirit Indigenous Student Awards, we actually have two students in the division who were nominated by staff who have received honorable mention. And so one of those students is from our Sturgeon Public Virtual Academy, and that is Sierra Balco. And the other student is from Sturgeon Composite High School, and that is Tristan Poitras. And they will be recognized at their school award ceremonies. And so please watch for that as trustees to be there for that ceremony, and they will also get a congratulatory letter from the board chair on behalf of the board.
7.2 School Resource Officer Award recipient, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. For your information, is another positive story and some good news. The Building Blocks Community Award recognizes an individual that has contributed to the continued growth of youth in Sturgeon County. And we were excited to be notified by the Neighborhood Development Coordinator that Constable Simon LaJoy was put forward from the youth leadership team, which is cool, and was nominated and then received and recognized the Building Blocks of Community Award for this year. Prepared to take any questions.
Awesome, thank you. 7.3 Communications Report. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. For your information is the monthly communication report aligned with our marketing goals for this year. I hope you receive this with interest and joy, as I always do each month, and capture some of the good things that communications, the good things in our division that communications is capturing and promoting to all our parents and stakeholders. You can see through here yourself. We celebrate, of course, our Sturgeon Night of Music and Fine Arts. We are very excited that our summer school continues to be very well attended. Not attended yet, sorry. Very well registered. But it's being well promoted and well received. And then you can see some other activities where we've promoted Hats On for mental health. We recognize the Red Dress Day. We, of course, celebrate our admin professionals who we could do nothing without. And I'm very thankful that they are supporting us and that we celebrate them in this last month. Of course, we had Education Week. You can see some other, we're in our communities. The carnival was, again, to promote our public school in Legal. And other things could walk through page by page, but I hope that you've had a chance to see, and that there's not a surprise here, but if there is, you have a moment to follow the links from the report, because they'll go to some of the videos that capture the good work that's happening in Sturgeon Public Schools. Admin is prepared to take any questions.
Stacy?
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. I just want to say thank you again for the format and the way that this report is brought forward, especially with the links in it. I think it's fantastic that we are able to refresh our memories of what's been going on, because there's always a ton of it. And I think that we are showing up really positively in the media. And I really appreciate how this report links back to all of the targets that we've made. I like to see the data on that. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on, 7.4 monthly financial report. Liliana.
Liliana Levacon, Associate Superintendent, Corporate Services. Included in your package is the monthly financial report for the month of April 2023. So as at the end of April, the division deficit is 1.9 million due to unbudgeted grants. That's the first bullet. And this shows up in every month, but we update the numbers as the number change for us. So we did receive 925,944 in new grants that were not budgeted, and we have a remaining unspent balance of 440,000, of which some of it may be deferred to the next year, depending on where we are allowed to postpone the expenses to the next fiscal year. We also had higher than budgeted interest revenue on our deposit accounts, specifically by 529,000 that we are spending on areas that we need to allocate certain priorities. Also, the timing of certain revenues and expenses, such as fee collections, insurance, utilities, is different throughout the year. So that creates a fluctuation in our spending when they occur. And as you may recall, every month we talk about the fact that many of our expenses happen during the first 10 months of the year while the school is on. The division also expensed 411,000 of operating dollars on capital assets. And we also have higher than budgeted amortization due to the adjustments we had to do at year-end last year. So when excluding the above noted temporary surplus, the division would have had a deficit of 2.76 million as of the end of April, as opposed to a deficit of 1.57 million as planned as of April 30th. And that's just a proration based on the months that have completed. Reminder that our target deficit as approved by the board is 2.3 million. However, the minister reduced that deficit approval to 2 million, a little bit over 2 million. The division will be required to meet the access to unrestricted surplus as the minister approved. And with our deficit going faster than we expected, we do have means to adjust against our capital reserves and deferred path amounts that we have set aside. We also anticipate a rebound as we continue to receive money from the government on monthly equal payments. So during the summer month, we'll receive the same amounts as we receive now, but we'll incur less expenses. So we do anticipate a rebound. When looking at the details of the variance under pre-K to 12, revenues are higher than budgeted by 1.15 million due to various items, the most important items being the ATA salary settlement top-up of 360,000, student enrollment growth grant of 138,000, the timing of fee collection again being accelerated in the first 10 months, higher than anticipated donations by 167,000, mostly were related to graduation and also higher than budgeted fundraising revenues. In terms of expenses, they're also higher to keep up with the higher revenue. So the expenses are higher than budgeted by 1.46 million, mainly due to accelerated timing of the expenses associated with instructions in the first 10 months. And of course, a net zero effect is the ATA salary settlement. Centralized instructional services revenues are higher than budgeted by 218,000 due to the timing of how we spend our money. And we also received more than budgeted Jordan Principal funds. And we also allocated some interest revenue to support the upgrade of technology in schools. So that's 159,000. Expenses are also higher than budgeted by 324,000 due to the fact there is the fluctuation of the first 10 months. And we also have higher than budgeted amortization on IT equipment that affected us by 163,000. And this amount is anticipated to affect our bottom line, so we will offset that against our other variances. Under operations and maintenance, revenues includes additional unbudgeted Alberta education funding of 85,000, which is the lease revenue that we received from the government to support the Legal Public School. Settlement from liquidation of assets under ASBE. So we're still going through the liquidation after our exit with ASBE. And we put a portion of that settlement into O&M and a portion into system administration, as this is how we split our insurance costs. So that old insurance at ASBE gave us 95,000 in settlements this year. 275,000 of additional interest revenue has been transferred here to offset the loss incurred due to disposal of assets. In terms of expenses, they're higher than budgeted by 954,000 due to the Sturgeon Comp flood. As a reminder, we did receive the insurance at the end of the fiscal year. However, when we processed the payments for the invoices that executed the work of Sturgeon Comp, they were in the new year. So we have a misalignment in there. In terms of expenses, they are higher. They're also, sorry, I'm repeating myself. Also in the expenses that are higher, we have 197,000 of snow clearing costs that we didn't budget, and loss on disposal of obsolete equipment of 255,000. We also had higher than budgeted salaries and benefits due to unbudgeted two positions, 120,000. All of this will anticipate the bottom line at year end. Under transportation services, revenue is higher than budgeted, and so are the expenses due to the fuel subsidy money that we received from the government and we paid to our contractors. And again, the 10 months accelerated expenses. System administration is higher than budgeted due to additional interest earned on deposit accounts. So we do still have a little bit left in system admin that's above the budget. And also the other portion of the ASB settlement of 45,000. Expenses are tracking slightly below budget by 65,000, mainly due to the timing of expenditures. Under external services, both revenues and expenses are tracking lower, mainly due to the less secondment than budgeted. Non-budgeted additional grants were received later in the year, and we are spending them as planned. And we will have a portion of these grants deferred to the next year. And also under capital investment to April 30th, we had 411,000 of operating dollars spent on capital assets. Attaches the report for your detailed review, and administration is open to take any questions.
Tasha.
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward 6. Lillian, I was just wondering if we could pop up to operations and maintenance and the $197,000 unbudgeted snow clearing costs. It seems kind of significant, and given that winter is only half of our year. But I was wondering if you could just give me a little bit of a flavor. How are we planning to avoid that? Like, that's a huge unexpected cost we weren't looking at. So what are we doing for next year? And maybe explain how we ended up at $997,000 over budget.
For this year, we budgeted 40,000 for snow removal, and we were directed to have enhanced snow clearing. And with our limited staff in O&M, we can do this work in-house. We also have our caretakers and custodians in school that cannot keep up with the snow removal, so we had to hire external contracts to help us. So this added up to approximately 250,000 worth of costs during the year. And for next year, we budgeted for that amount, as we foresee we need to have the same kind of arrangements. And we have budgeted in O&M for it.
Just wondering, and this is not so much about the presentation, but was it well spent money? Was everybody satisfied with the snow clearing we had this year? Was it money well spent?
Well, as far as feedback was given to me, I think the snow clearing met the needs that is expected in terms of clearing and have the grounds safe for our students and staff. We also were able to avoid certain accidents or issues with staff, because clearing snow by hand is a difficult task. So that helped us in terms of not preventing certain accidents at work for our staff, and some of them also are not in a position to do extended effort outside and heavy lifting. So that was also a success. Could it be done for less? I believe so. However, having our locations and our standards of service delivery, which is have the snow clear before anybody comes to school, it did provide us with that advantage.
Okay. Are you done? No other questions on this? Okay, we're going to move on to 7.5, the monthly IT report. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. Provided for your information is our monthly insight in how information technology is supporting our schools and learning. I know that right now, and it's been highlighted in the front matter, that we're looking at another significant deployment of loft boards within our schools. So right now, information technology is going into schools, talking with principals who will bring in teachers and to say this wall or that wall and make sure that when because it will be contracted services through summer, come in and install a number of the new loft boards, that it's in a location that meets the learning needs within that classroom. Provided also the insight into uptime and what targeted computer systems or technology systems we are supporting, and reflection on the printer. I will just also acknowledge we still do not have Four Winds information in there, but we are working on that. At this point, we don't have that data. Again, it's because the dashboard that comes with Konica Minolta, which is our provider in every other location, CO and schools, collects this and brings it in, and then we can take it out of the Excel and put it into a format that makes sense for us. And the provider in Four Winds is still Xerox, and it doesn't tie to this system. And so right now we're looking at manual reports. Just wanted to anticipate that question, but we are looking at it. Admin is prepared to take any questions on this report.
Okay, seeing no hands, we will move on. Reports from the trustees and standing committees. So my report is attached. Highlights from it. The Landing Trail 40th anniversary committee meeting. Plans are looking really well formed. It's going to be a great family orientated kind of evening. They're doing assembly with the kids in the afternoon, and then from 4 to 6 there's the fire department's going to be barbecuing, I think, hot dogs, and there'll be hay rides, or Long Riders is coming with the wagons. I don't know if there'll be hay or not. And then they're doing a family dance from 6 to 9. So even if you did not attend Landing Trail, you are all welcome. And then I think, in my opinion, staff recognition on Friday went very well. And that's all my highlights. You can see the rest of it in online. Joe.
Yeah, I attended all the regular things. Arbitration, oops, sorry. Go Dwyer Zone 3, Ward 3. Superintendent evaluation, organizational meetings, Sturgeon County meeting, committee of the whole, Camilla School Council, staff recognition, public board, transportation committee, and Rotary meeting. But one thing I do want to bring out is Camilla had their book fair a couple weekends ago and made $4,000 and some on it. And that was the 40th year that they've had that book fair. So they've been successful every year. So really good turnout, and there's a whole bunch of stuff happening at Camilla and the colony in the next month, like everybody else. That's my report.
Thank you. Tasha?
Tasha Oatwin-McClay, Ward 6. So aside from our standard list, I also attended Guthrie and Nemayo's school council, and I'm happy to report that Guthrie is in the process of looking at revamping their board and their bylaws, which haven't been looked at in quite a long time. So they are taking that under their wings for September. I also attended, through the St. Albert Chamber of Commerce, a webinar about busting myths about autism in the workplace, which was super interesting. I learned some things and I unlearned even more. And it was just a really interesting and it wasn't strictly autism. I guess that was the interesting part. I thought it was going to be all autism, but it's about neurodivergent thinking. So, in my humble opinion, we're all a little neurodivergent, but you know, how to address those sort of issues as we enter into the workplace, or, you know, I found it even valuable in terms of our educational model, how we treat, how we address, how we interact with neurodivergent children. So it was really interesting. There is, it was through Norquest College actually, and there's additional seminars available. So this was the intro, which if you're in education or you have any sort of neurodivergent people around you, you know the basics. The next sessions are a little bit more in depth. So I'm really looking forward to those. And I just want to say thank you to Crystal, who I think is listening, for helping get me set up on that, because it was interesting. Thank you.
Janine.
Janine Peckwin, Ward 1. So all of the usual highlights that everybody has. A little extras. I had Zone 2-3 for April was delayed till May 1st. So there's 2 Zone 2-3s this month. One I never attended. One is this Friday. Some of my highlights. I went to the volunteer tea at Oak Park School, and our new music teacher is amazing. He writes songs with the kids, and they perform their own original composites, and it's so cute, and they're so engaged because they actively participate in writing it. So just a shout out to him, because he's a great addition to that school. Not that all the teachers aren't super great, but it was his day for the volunteer tea to sing with all the kids. I went to Redwater School for their Hats On for Mental Health Day, and then I also went there. They had a mental health morning, so they had a keynote speaker in to talk about kind of mental health and it was good. And then they had little sessions all through the school. So they had career presentations and coloring, and a dog who was just great that they get it for exams and stuff like that. And it was just a really cool morning that I just popped into these different sessions that the kids got to pick which sessions they went to. And yeah, I have an award ceremony coming up at Oak Park School, and I had both parent councils, and it's really nice at Redwater School's parent council to seem to have some sort of stability and plans moving forward where we can talk about the future, and there's excitement about long-term plans. So that was great.
Thank you. Trish.
Trish Marie Elliott, Ward 4. I have submitted my trustee report. The things of note over this month were the bus driver appreciation, which was a great event, and I really hope we can make that an annual thing. The Rock of Ages presented by Camilla was amazing. Great performances, talented students, and really dedicated staff. That was great. Sturgeon Comp School Council, one of our teachers, John Valeri who is the Indigenous Success Coach, gave a terrific report on what they're working on there. He's working with Emily Milne from MacEwan University and studying pathways to post-secondary, I think is what she is working on. And they're looking at how parent involvement and engagement is so important, and they're hoping to improve that with our families. And he also spoke of the traditional Indigenous meals that they did at Sturgeon Comp and at Redwater, which were really successful. The chair, Ms. Rowe, shared the ASCA resolutions and results with our council, and Ms. DeVolder shared that our enrollments for Sturgeon Comp are now at 890. So that was really exciting. The Spirit Grill is running smoothly. They're offering a virtual presentation from White Hatter today and tomorrow, I think. And if anyone wants to jump on that, I believe I have the information. Let me know. And they're also doing a saffron presentation in September. And if we could ask anyone who has a school that has grade 9 students in it, they're really looking for what they need is school council members for next year. and fundraising association parents for next year. And also people to help run the casino on June 30th and July 1st, which is going to be really tough because it's a long weekend. But a lot of these parents, their kids will have graduated already, and it's going to be hard for them to be motivated to give up their long weekend. So if we could get some of the incoming parents, this is a great way to get involved. And so. And sorry, Tasha.
Sorry, how do we let anybody know that we have somebody? Like you were saying, they're looking for people for the committee and people for the casino. Who do we contact to say, hey, I got somebody or I know someone?
I think they just have to tell that person to join in their first meeting, which is in September.
Yeah, but that's not going to help the July long weekend casino.
Oh, the casino.
Sorry if I interrupt here. There is an online, whatever app it is, a volunteer scheduling app. I can forward that to, yeah, Sign Up Genius, I think. I can forward that to all the trustees. And I believe it's going out through the school council chair's email as well, but I'll send it out because I got it.
That's
as
a good
parent
idea. I
as well.
haven't seen it yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love casinos and I have no life, so long weekends are useless to me.
So upcoming events are the transition to adulthood tomorrow evening. June 13th is the athletic awards, and June 14th are the fine arts awards at the comp. Sorry, what day was that? June 13th. Hey, school council at Sturgeon Heights School. Some might remember me asking to get the North Forest cleaned out there. Well, guess what? The North Forest is clean. They had the junior forest wardens come in and 60 volunteers with chainsaws cleared the deadfall and made some trails. And they created 2 classrooms with some spaces for more. And they have to open up a part of the fence and paint a crosswalk over the parking area, but it's going to create some wonderful outdoor spaces. The Sturgeon Heights Musical Theater Group, if anyone was at the Sturgeon Night of Music and Fine Arts, they would have seen them perform. And they are going to be participating in the Rainmaker Rodeo Parade in St. Albert this weekend. So that's really exciting. And thanks to Ms. Walter, who came out to our school and gave some hints, we have some great Google reviews on our school website. And one thing parents were also requesting, again, standardization of communications, especially in sports, because each teacher seems to use a different method, and sometimes parents don't get the communications at all, and the kids forget to tell them. Student Advisory Committee meeting, I thought it was really well organized, and I feel like the students are starting to finally get to know each other and develop relationships, and it was a great feeling this last one specifically. Sturgeon Strides I attended. I love this event. It shows our community-minded students, how they work hard for a great cause, which was the Morinville Food Bank, and they had a lot of fun while doing it. And staff recognition was amazing. I thought it was really well attended this year. There's a great ambience and the food was really good. And the video at the end with the thanks from the students, that was brilliant. It brought tears to my eyes. It was sweet and funny, and I don't know why we hadn't thought of that before, because that was something that's been missing in that event is the students. So good job on that. And that's my report.
Thank you. Cindy.
Cindy Briggs, Ward 2. My report is in the meeting package for your viewing. Couple highlights for me this week, or this month. I really considered this whole month an arts month. So Landing Trail Art Show was absolutely stunning and amazing. And all the work that the students and the staff must have put into that was just amazing. Rock of Ages at Morinville Cultural Center. I don't have enough to say about how much work went into that production and how brave all those students were up on that stage for 2 nights, and a matinee was so nice to watch. Legal School Carnival was a wonderful event and very well received by the community. And I'd like to thank all the staff that did all the work and spent their Saturday
at Legal Carnival, because that was so nice to see. And other than that, staff recognition, of course, I'm gonna piggyback on what everybody else said, was a wonderful day. So thank you to all that helped.
Stacy.
Stacy Beaver, Ward 5. I also submitted my report. It's in the package for your viewing. A couple of highlights from EMPS, their school council. We have a new learning farm liaison. So we have now some longevity with the learning farm. We've got our chicks are all headed outside. I think they're going outside right away. Right now they're in their makerspace area, I believe. But that's exciting that it's no longer a teacher-run program. The Learning Farm is community and parent supported, so that no matter where our teachers go, we're going to have this Learning Farm and the intention and the knowledge there. And I believe it's Stang Farms that has stepped up. They have tons of knowledge about chickens, and it's just fantastic that they're volunteering their time to make sure that this program stays with our schools. At Four Winds, Annie is coming up. So if everybody really loved Rock of Ages, you're going to love Annie next week. The tickets are available in the same way as the Camilla one through Power School. If anyone wants to check that out, I believe it's June. I want to say 1st and 2nd, maybe 31st and 1st. Sorry, I'll have to confirm that. I'm going on the 1st in the evening. I attended the CASA open house. So at the comp is our first open classroom for CASA. And I feel like in the boardroom, we've had a lot of reports and we've had a lot of information about it, but I didn't completely understand how that classroom would look in our schools. So I attended the open house and it was really great to see how the space works. Because I know there was lots of trying to figure out the logistics of having a separate door and washroom spaces and how it worked within our schools. And it was really great to see how that works. We had our staff there as well as the CASA staff on hand. And I think around 9 families were present that night. And I'm really hopeful that this is going to be a great addition to our schools. I don't see it being a hindrance to our day-to-day operations of how the high school is running. I think it's a really positive thing, and I look forward to seeing how this plays out going forward as well. All the staff is really mindful of how it's affecting everybody else in our schools and the other students, and making sure that the transitions in and out of this classroom are making sense for the students. So it was really great. One of the other things I attended was the Moosehide Walk at École Public, and some of the students from the Inspire program at Four Winds also came over. So that was a nice event. It was led by an elder with drumming, and he shared some knowledge with us, and really important to make sure that we're keeping those partnerships and keeping that conversation going in our communities. So that was in partnership with Jesse's House. Landing Trail Art Night, fantastic. I was blown away the amount of effort put into that. I was absolutely thrilled to see that. One of the other things that I attended was the Inspire banquet at Four Winds. So Inspire was that new program, again, run by Jesse's House in one of our schools to support some of our highest needs girls this year. The banquet was phenomenal, and it was just such a great recognition of the program itself, but the girls and where they started and where they ended was such an incredible difference in their lives and their families. And the attendance was huge. There was siblings there, and their mentors were there, and it was a beautiful event. And there was some comments that we need this for our boys. We need this to be in our other schools. We need this type of programming across the division. So I'm really proud that we were able to pilot that, and look forward to seeing how that plays out in the future. And yes, deaf recognition was fantastic. I've also been going through kind of the ASBA Speakers Corners videos. So I did the one from earlier this month, with Dr. Jerome Cranston about anti-racist schools. And they also have their meetings with Marilyn Dennis, president of ASBA, and each of the party leaders. I haven't watched all of them. I haven't had time to do that, but it's actually really interesting what ASBA brings to those meetings and how those leaders respond. It's all there in video. It's not a briefing, it's the actual video of the meetings. So it might be worth checking out. It is on the ASBA website. You do have to log in. So if any of our admin want to look at that as well, just let us know. And I believe you need one of the trustees to log you in there, but it is available for everybody to watch. So I thought those were interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. Advocacy committee. Stacy.
Advocacy committee has not met since our last meeting, but we did have our student advisory committee meeting. And I don't know if Jace is not online, I don't think. But the advocacy committee has really supported having the student advisory committee exist. And thank you to the trustees who got that started in the past and are continuing to make this a priority. Because like Trish said, I think the students are really getting to know each other and gel as a group and understand what their purpose is and how they can really make a difference in our school division. So I think our purpose has been met, and I feel that our goals at the beginning of the year, each meeting had pieces of it, but this final meeting really wrapped it up. And so I was really proud of the work that we've done as advocacy committee on the student advisory committee. Thanks.
I just want to add to that. I've really noticed that it's filtered down, at least at Gibbon School. So now they have representatives come from each class and they gather with all of their ideas, and then they're represented at the larger committee meeting. And so thank you, advocacy committee. Audit, Finance and Human Resources Committee, Trish.
Trish Marie Elliott, Ward 4. We held a meeting on May the 3rd, at which time the external members of the new audit committee were introduced through a written introduction. And the main focus of that meeting was the review and in-depth discussion of the budget. And I just want to say thanks to Ms. LeVaycont for a very clear presentation and her patience in going through the whole thing line by line and answering questions as we went. And that was very helpful. I think everyone would agree. And yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Building and Maintenance Committee, Cindy.
Cindy Briggs, Ward 2. We had a committee meeting on April 26th. And the new business that we did talk about is Alberta Education extending the joint use and planning agreement till June 2025. So that gives all our municipal partners some time to get their ducks in a row. Facilities personnel have been diligently working evenings and weekends to complete the cleaning of the parking lots and repair the potholes. We had some AEDs on back order for Lillian Schick and Bonnecourt School, and they are still on back order, but they are well on their way. And I'm prepared to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Policy Committee, Janine.
That's me. We had a policy committee on May 15th. So kind of how it goes, we do a first, second, and third reading. So if there's lots of changes, we might just put it straight through. No, if there's not any changes, we'll put it straight through to a public board meeting. The ones we looked at require a little bit more work, so nothing is coming forward on today's public board meeting from the policy committee.
Thank you. Transportation, Joe.
Joe Dwyer, Ward 3. One of the big thing going on right now is contracts and getting them signed up and move on, but there will be a transportation committee meeting right after this meeting today.
Thank you. Alberta School Board Association representative, Janine.
that's me again. Like I said, we had a meeting on May 1st. And there's a meeting coming this Friday. Also, this Friday is the Edwin Parr Award ceremony. So we have some representation going to that, but I will have more to say at Cal because we haven't had our meeting and they'll get the 6 position statements and stuff this Friday.
Thank you. Public School Board Association of Alberta, Trish.
Trish Marie Elliott, Ward 4. Nothing new to report, just the upcoming events are the Spring General Meeting, June 1st to 3rd in Calgary. We have our Franklin Covey PD, which is on Great School Boards on June 23rd, which I believe is here. And there will be a PSBC meeting in August in Medicine Hat. I believe everybody's receiving the advocate, which the last one was out May 15th. And they've been continuing to share messages for candidates. Any questions on PSBAA?
Okay, thank you. New business. On to the fun stuff. The 2023-2024 draft budget. Liliana.
Liliana LeVacant, Associate Superintendent, Corporate Services. So you'll have in front of you a package related to the budget, the draft budget. The budget will require a motion to be approved. So the motion is included in there. I will go through the presentation. There is also a report that will be posted on our website, which I will not go through today. So just the presentation and all the information that comes out of this presentation, the review and approval of the Board of Trustees will be posted on our website tomorrow. So everything will be up there. Also, any fees that will be approved by the board today will be updated on our website tomorrow. So just the preamble. So I will ask you to refer to the presentation slide deck. So this is the budget presentation. It's in draft until your approval. The process started on May 3rd when we had our Audit, Finance, and Human Resources Committee, at which time the committee and I believe everybody was present, reviewed our draft budget for 23-24. However, all the work doesn't start then. It was started way back in December, January. This is when we actually put together our enrollments and we send them to the government in early January. So that's outlined on slide 3. In February, March, we expect the budget announcements from the provincial government. However, we don't get our budget profile and the funding manual till March. We were happy to receive our profile and the funding manual early this year. So we got it on March 9 and allowed us to work in with more updated information as reflected in the funding manual. There are changes every year to the model, and we apply them as we learn about them. In March, April, we enter into multiple collaborative conversations with all the stakeholders to put together the various portion of the budgets. In April, we present the preliminary budget to the Board of Trustees, and we enter into conversation and questions, and we make sure that we align our budgets with all the stakeholder feedback and the funding manual and everybody that has input into the process. And we are here today in May, where the draft budget is presented to the board, and the board is required to approve the budget as submitted or advise us to do some more work. Just a quick reminder, the budget is due to the government by May 31st. In September, October, we actually look at our actual enrollments and see where we are, if we're still aligned with our budget, and if we need to make minor changes to our budget to align with the enrollments. On the other side, from November to June, we prepare monthly reports where we track ourselves against the budgets and we report to the board. And we actually provide a progress report every month. On slide 4, we talk a little bit about the guiding principles. So in our process of preparing the budget, we adopt a fair and equitable allocation model. We use collaborative decision-making principles to ensure that everybody that needs to be involved is involved. And we start with a set of budget assumptions, and then we add to the budget assumptions as we go through the process and we learn about it. On slide 5, a little bit busier slide, it talks about the key budget assumptions. So when we start the process early in the year, we assume that the grant would be at about the same level as it was the previous year. But we know there are changes every year. We also look at the enrollments. So for 23-24, the enrollment projections are up by 247 headcounts compared to last year's projections at the same time. So not the current, but last year projections at the same time. But when we compare to the September 29, 2022 count, we're only projected 82 headcounts more. Total full-time equivalent, or FTE, for staff for 23-24 is at 704, which is slightly higher than the current number at 698. Class sizes are the same as the current year, except for grades 10 to 12, which have been reduced from 30 to 28.95. The cost of operations and maintenance, transportation, and information technology are continuing to see a rise due to inflationary pressures on pretty much all their items. Reserves will be slightly above the allowed cap by 507,000 by the end of 23-24. And interest revenue is continuing to support our operations as we identify the emergent needs. We did budget certain portions of the interest into some of our operations already. Going to slide 6, Alberta Education Annual Grant Funding. If you look at the top of the slide, the funding that we get from Alberta Education is slightly higher by 2.1 million this year compared to last year. On the left side of the slide, I've identified where the changes are in the funding, and on the right side, I identified how the funding is allocated. The 2.1 million difference resulted in basic instruction increase of 2.7 million, services and supports increase of 686,000, O&M increase of 370,000, transportation increase of 402,000, system admin increase of 78,000, teacher settlement increase of 1.2 million. That's actually a continuation because they gave us an in-year grant this year. And stabilization funding, which replaced bridge funding. So I look at it the same, has decreased by 3.7 million. As certain amounts of the bridge funding was allocated to the lines above that I just mentioned. The offset is into stabilization funding. In terms of how we allocated the funds this year, the division budget of for 23-24 has increased by 6.6 million, And that's the result of pre-K instruction increase of 5.9 million, O&M maintenance increase of 545,000, transportation increase of 131,000. You'll see that the increase here is slightly lower than the funding, or actually much lower than the funding, and that's a result of allocating most of the funding that we received from the government to offset the fees and reduce the fees to the families this year. System administration increased by 53,000. And in order to offset the overall 6.6 million increase, we draw on our operating reserves, 3.4 million. And we also draw on our deferred grants by 1.5 million. Moving on to the next slide, it talks a little bit about the enrollments. And we see a slight increase in enrollments when compared to the budget amounts. So year-over-year budget, we had an increase of 247. But actually, when you look at the actual numbers for the current year, is much smaller. So our projection for next year is 5238, which is just a little bit higher than what we currently have at 5156. The biggest increase we see in the upper grades, grade 10 to 12. Next slide is just a high-level comparison of revenues and expenditures. So our revenues are higher by 4.7 million or 6.2%, while expenditures are also higher than last year by 6.6 million or 8.4%. Going on to slide 9, there is a pie shape presentation of our revenues. You'll notice that Alberta Education gives us 88% of all our revenues, and that's topped up by the amortization, which is also funded by Alberta Education, and that's 5%. So 93% of our revenues come from Alberta Education. The rest of the amounts are coming from other government of Alberta. Also, we receive funding from the federal government, and a little bit for investment and fees that we generate through school and transportation fees. Going on to the next slide, an interesting analysis. If we take all instructional funding, or what's considered instructional funding, if we compare the 2 years and enrollment numbers, we see that the funding actually has decreased year over year from 93.88 per student to 9,212 per student. Moving on into slide 11, which is a breakdown of the revenues. You will see that some areas have increased, in particular the government of Alberta, the federal government, and that's mostly due to Jordan Principle funding that we are able to secure. School and transportation fees have been decreased significantly this year, and the most decrease there is due to the reduction of fees to families. Other revenues have also decreased. That's a compilation of a few sources of revenues. We also have a few sales, and those are relatively the same this year. Donation and fundraising are expecting to decrease, but that's really an unknown on how successful we are on securing donations and fundraising, and they could be higher next year. In particular, we've learned that we may have a donation from Pembina towards our field house, so that's crossing our fingers that it's going forward. In terms of investment income, it's much higher than the current year. However, it's not as high as we actually saw this year. And the number of 600,000 for investment income is based on keeping the interest rates approximately the same or a bit lower. However, we anticipate we have a slight reduction in our cash flows in the bank, so therefore earning a little bit less than the current year. For next slide, slide 12, you can go ahead and click to the end. We'd like to present out of all the fees that are moving forward. The most important one are the transportation fees, and our board of trustees focused on the reduction of the fees to the families. And you'll see that eligible rider grade 1 to 12, as well as pre-K eligible, which is the resident fees, have been reduced by 50%. And the details are in the slide and will also be posted on our website. While our choice rider fees have been also reduced, but only by 20%, as it requires more resources from us to provide choice rider. We did break down two new categories, which is the ineligible grade 1 to 12 and ineligible pre-K and grade K rider. And those are riderships for students that reside beyond the allowable distance that the government is funding us. So basically, we do not receive funding for those riders. However, we will continue to provide the services, and that's the equivalent of the old choice riders, which is the same fees for current year. However, they are maintained at the full level, so no reduction in that area. Supplemental bus remains the same. Outside ridership for both categories remain the same as the current year, and the replacement bus pass remains the same. Slide 13, revenues. We continue on the revenue explanation. So the difference is base funding for instruction increased by 2.7 million due to increase in rates and increased enrollment. So if you remember the funding model that was presented to the Board of Trustees, they've actually updated the rates that they fund our students. So they reduced the bridge funding and they allocated to the line budgets. For services and supports, there is an increase of 687,000. This includes an increase in specialized learning supports, Indigenous funding. So the FNMI funding is how it's listed in our funding profile. Kindergarten severe grants. However, we see a decrease in PATH-related funding and moderate language delay. For operations and maintenance, we have a funding increase of 377,000. However, the IMR funding is decreased by 5,000. Transportation funding has increased by 402,000 or 8.6% due to the new funding model, while bridge/stabilization funding decreased by 3.7 million. We also have a spend deferred capital allocation recognized as revenue. So that has increased by 179,000. So that's supported funding for the amortization of buildings. Going to the expenditures, the pie shape graph is presented for your information. So you'll see that our expenditures are broken down by programs. Pre-K to grade 12 represents 77% of our expenditures, followed by facilities, 13%, transportation at 7%, system admin just over 3%, and external services under 1%. Next slide, slide 15. Is breaking down the budget into the amounts. You'll see the base instruction that has gone up by 5.3%, 5.3 million or 13%. Services and learning supports is up by 900,000 or 9%. School supports, which is facilities and IMR, is up by 578,000 or 5%. System admin is up by 53,000 or 2%. Amortization and asset retirement obligation are up by 82,000 or 2%, and other supports such as Shine Beyond Limits and mental health capacity building, to name a couple, are overall down by 323,000 or 7%. Going on to the next slide. To explain the expenditure differences, salaries, wages, and benefits for certificated staff increased by 4.8 million, primarily due to increased staffing of 20.5 FTE. We've added new position to support growth. A change in ADA salary settlement also affects the budget. Increase in ASCBP premium rates and increases in overall in the employer payroll taxes such as CPP and EI. School-based support staff increased by 517,000 or 10.6 FTE as we added more support in schools, and also the cost of benefits overall has increased for that category as well. Supports and services staff increases by 1.8 million or 38.15 FTE is primarily due to additional educational assistance position that supports classrooms and also the benefits that are triggered by that. Going into the next slide, we talk a little bit about IMR and CMR. Again, IMR is supporting our operations maintenance in as prescribed by the government. We have certain categories of expenditures that we are allowed to code to this grant portion of our funding. IMR operating has been reduced by 5,000 compared to last year. We also received from the government capital maintenance and renewal, or CMR for short, and that is to be used for capital items that are supporting our O&M. And the projects must be approved by Alberta Infrastructure. And although we have repeatedly requested for more funding in that area, the funding has been reduced this year from 483,000 to 355,000. Our deferred maintenance is continuing to increase. Last year was 49 million, now it's 58 million. And deferred maintenance is basically maintenance that should have been done according to a schedule. However, it was deferred because the areas were not, for lack of better words, broken. So we let them basically break before we fix them. It's not a healthy approach. We should have a combination between preventative and deferred maintenance. However, we are not in a position to provide preventative maintenance at the required level. Going on to the next slide about staffing. So the breakdown in our staffing is presented in this slide. You'll see that for next year, we will have 377 FTE certificated and 325 in support staff. That's an increase of 94 FTE broken down into 32.83 in certificated and 61.19 in support staff. And we broke it down into various categories, and we have school-based staff and instruction central, and also a little bit of change in admin and maintenance, and no change in transportation. So the additional increase in certificated position we have we have additional teacher FTE as provided above, 32.83, and one division principal. In terms of support position, we had many educational assistants added, 2.8 business managers, a new HR advisor, and a new help desk support in IT. And all these were put in place to support growth and student well-being. And we were able to partially offset this increase with contracted services that we will hire to provide classroom complexity support. Increase in O&M is due to increase in the one apprentice electrician, 2 caretakers positions, and increase in permanent staff to offset the casual hire. So at the end of 23-24, we anticipate to finish the year just slightly above the operating reserve cap of 2.767693. So we'll close the year with 3,275,719 in our operating reserve, so slightly higher. As a result, we did put together a letter to the minister similar to last year that talks about our proposed budget being in a deficit position, and also to allow us to carry forward 507,000 above the cap that's required. Moving on to the slide 20th, the minister may consider our proposal and may approve as we submit it. However, we will not know that for another few months, especially with being an election year. We're not sure when we'll hear back. We usually hear about our budgets late summer or early fall. However, we're not sure this year. Also, in line with the Alberta Education Business Plan for 23-26, we try to align our budget with the provincial outcome 1 and 4. So we focused our efforts on curriculum development, supporting the assessment process to identify learning challenges and monitor student success, expand target intervention to increase specialized learning supports to address learning loss and complexity learning needs, also fostering positive student mental health and well-being, and continuing to efficiently manage all resources to meet financial governance and administrative needs. We do, however, are exposed to risks. So projected operating reserves are estimated in April, so we don't close our books till the end of August. We do process adjustments as we identify them in the year-end process or as recommended by the external auditor up to the end of November. So our projected reserves may be slightly different than what's presented in this budget. And in addition, our operating reserves for 24-25, so the year after next year, is anticipated to be around 1.4 million, which is less than half our allowable reserve cap, which will provide us with much less flexibility to respond to our needs. We also remind everybody that the weighting moving average is based on last year enrollments, the current year enrollments, and the projected for next year enrollments. Next year enrollments is only 50% of our funding, so any growth that we see year over year is only funded at 50%. It takes us a while to catch up in terms of funding, and when our enrollments are trending up, it's disadvantageous for us. We get less funding. When our enrollments are going down, it is advantageous to us as it's based on the older numbers. So with this, I'm wrapping up the presentation and giving the floor for questions.
Tasha?
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward 6. First, I think and foremost, it's important to acknowledge Liliana and her team for creating a budget that is understandable and in large part the new tools created specifically for us to build our budget was incredibly helpful. So I just want to say thank you again to you and your team. Couple of things I wanted to bring up. As a board, I think we can all be really proud that we've added the FTEs that we have this year to support students and staff in our schools. My concern, not necessarily with this budget, but with budgets going forward, and you touched on it briefly, was the weighted moving average. I think more than even when it came in, it's a concern to me because we don't actually know how it works. We've never actually gone through a cycle using it. I'm also a little concerned with grants coming in unexpectedly and how that might affect future budget planning. And lastly, and I wrote it down specifically, I'm really proud that we did take our bridge funding and try to mitigate drastic changes by spreading it out over 3 years. But how's that going to impact us coming up?
Piana.
So going into the next year with a 4.2 million deficit budget, it's a difficult request that we put in front of our minister. However, we try to utilize all our operating reserves or almost all our operating reserves to the areas of needs. We do recognize, and we identify this in the letter to the minister, that the needs are continuing to grow for our division in all aspects, as noted in the presentation, and we do require to upkeep with the student needs. We do hope that the minister will see our pressure and will continue the funding that we require to upkeep our budget. And there are two items that we are particularly concerned. One is our deficit budget. We hope that next year the funding will match the needs, so we present a balanced budget. However, we'll see how the minister receives our request. And the second one is the stabilization grant. From what we've learned from Alberta Education so far, this is funding that was given to us to offset what would have been a cut for us. And it's a limited number of divisions that are facing that kind of funding called stabilization grant. And we weren't given much information. I think we are the division with the highest number in there. So our stabilization grant is 5.7 million. The funding profile will be posted on our website tomorrow, so everybody can see. And I think our Board of Trustees will take the opportunity to meet with our minister and discuss both these pressures face to face in the near future.
Thank you. And thank you for your advocacy.
Cindy?
Cindy Briggs, Ward 2. Thank you, Liliana, for this budget. I think our stakeholders are going to be quite pleased to see our transportation fees lowered, and our families are really going to appreciate that. I do have a huge concern with our deferred maintenance at 58 million, and I hope our stakeholders understand that we can't even look after our facilities the way we should be looking after them. So hopefully we can get more advocacy in this form so we can look after our facilities.
Liliana.
Thank you, Trustee Briggs. I would like to also comment on that observation. In our letter, we also have a bullet that talks about capital renewal. And in that bullet, we have identified that a 355,000 CMR does not even cover 1/3 of a roof. So we have no means to provide any medium-sized type of projects. So anything costing the division or any division between 1 and 5 million is hard to find. There is no funding source for that. There is no capital renewal grants available. So the only sources of funding we have so far is the CMR at 355,000 or the approval of large capital projects like the one that we're working on for the Gibbons solution. There is nothing in between. So in conversation with the government, we hope that the government will put something in place to support the medium-sized type of projects going forward.
Janine?
Like everybody else, thank you for your hard work. I appreciate spending today's dollars on today's kids, and I appreciate the EAs and the extra staffing. I worry about the long-term sustainability. We are running a almost 5 million, 4 point whatever million dollar deficit. I do not want to come back in 2 years and make cuts. So can we talk about the sustainability planning that went into hiring the staff and how we plan on maintaining that?
Shauna?
Shauna Warren, Superintendent. That is a great point, Trustee Pequin, and thank you. So a couple things. One, with the weighted moving average that was introduced when the UCP came into power in 2019, we've yet to have a year that we actually lived it. And so we are no longer funded on the September 30th count, truly. And so our old quote of today's dollars, today's kids doesn't exist anymore, because now we have to figure out, looking at a 3-year weighted moving average, what is the amount that needs to stay in that operating reserve, so that we know that when we have fluctuations in enrollment, when changes in needs, and again, because our funding is very much needs based, we start from the ground level and work with our schools very closely. And so it's a concern. And so as to how we are going to ensure, do we have to cut in the future? Well, we have an election that is looming, and to say we actually don't know. So we focused on what we have. We focused on the reserves. As you know, last year, our current letter to the minister is 27 pages long. That is our reserve mitigation strategy. And it is a repeat of last year's, because we were required to do so last year. We're required to do again. We added in more data, and I do want to give a shout out. Most of the members are online right now. This truly, this letter to the minister for the reserve mitigation strategy truly was a huge team effort to bring forward, to talk about the needs in our schools, the complexity that we're seeing, everything from how we're funded for our schools, for any type of capital maintenance of our buildings, to supporting the needs of our schools, etc. It is broken down into 27 pages of data and individual strategies, what we're looking for and what we need. Also, just like last year, because most of our schools do not have a June school council meeting, it is very important that we get this information out far and wide to all stakeholders. And so I have drafted a letter. It is very similar to the one that I sent out last year, that takes this whole budget, puts it down into some bullet forms for all of our stakeholders, from our staff to all of our families, so that they truly understand what we are living in and what the reality is of the dollars. And the big thing that is called out is the stabilization funding, because there was only a handful of boards that did receive it. And as Liliane alluded to, we are pretty sure that ours is by far the highest. It is a huge concern. 5.7 million on our small rural school division budget is a huge change. And we hope we don't have to face that, but we have no idea. There's been no speak about the stabilization funding. Is it staying? We have no idea. And so we focused on spending these dollars in our schools and getting the dollars in our schools. And we can't predict the future. So we are going to prepare ourselves with the data to put it forward to the minister to let them know our reality and make sure all of our stakeholders are aware. And then we see.
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. I guess on that same type of topic, we heard earlier that Sturgeon Composite High has enrollment of 890 as of last week, but our projection for that school is 814. Are we going to have a chance to maybe update our projected enrollment, if that's what we're being 50% funded on, to make sure that it is as high as realistic.
We are required to update our enrollments as of September 30th. Usually we do it on the 29th. And based on that, the province reviews our enrollment and they continue to monitor from September 29 to early December. And in around the new calendar year, they decide if our enrollment is beyond the 2% growth. And if it meets that requirements, we anticipate a grant to be given us mid-year. In the meantime, in September, we will review our allocations, and if more resources are required, we do have the superintendent discretionary in place to provide for some of that growth. And if that's not sufficient, we will have to make adjustments within the year. But we do anticipate at that level of growth of sturgeon comp that we will receive a top up. So we'll go with that assumption is in mind because it's in the funding manual, so they have to stick to their own rules.
Stacy.
I'm sorry, one more on slide 16. It's talking about expenditures and just the differences there. Can you just explain school-based support staff versus supports and service staff, and just who falls into each of those categories, just for clarification? Thank you.
Yeah, so we try to break this down based on how we track information. So the schools-based support staff are the staff that actually work in schools, and they're part of their own staff on a daily basis. So there would be librarians and office clerks and everybody is not certificated in schools. Supports and services are mainly SLS and PUF, so support learning services that support the schools with EAs and other services that the schools are needs, and also the PUFs that are mainly focused on pre-K. So these are the areas that are identified in our monthly reporting and centralized supports. Everything else in there is managed centrally, but provides support in schools.
Okay, I want to say thank you again, Liliana and your team. I think this is the fourth time you've so eloquently put us through this, and I think I'm getting it. So for our stakeholders out there, I just want to reiterate what has kind of been said and what I got, and then you can confirm if I am understanding it correctly. When we talk about in slide 5 to 7 in that area, where it's talking about the difference between the two budgets, I just want to remind myself and everybody else out there in the world, this is compared to the spring budget of 2022 that we submitted, and not our current. And so when it says, I can't remember, like our staffing levels, that's how much we've had to put in from the previous 2022 spring budget that we put in throughout this year.
Thank you, Chair. Most of our slides and presentation and analysis is budget to budget. So whatever we budget in May 2022 is compared to this budget. So budget 22-23 compared to budget 23-24. There are some comparisons for information as we made adjustments as needed throughout the year. So yes, we upped the staffing we use the superintendent discretionary and some variances from other areas, and we added more staffing throughout the year. So when you go to the staffing slide, it presents budget to budget, but also compared to current year. So when you look at current year versus next year, overall difference is only 6 FTE. So, but when you're looking budget to budget, it's much larger, it's 94 FTEs. That's the difference. But in general, most of our analysis is budget to budget.
Okay, thank you. And you had addressed it. It had been brought up by my fellow trustees and our superintendent about the new funding weighted moving average. And gone are the days, today's dollars for today's kids, which you can see on slide 10. In 2022, 2023 per student was 9,388, and in 23-24, because of our rise in students, that amount per student has decreased. And that we have had not the experience of living, like Trustee Otway-McClay had said, this weighted moving average for 3 years, because the 2 years we were in COVID. So we've been pretty stable, and now we really want to push for that growth, especially at the high school. And I love hearing that the numbers for registration has gone up. Our stabilization funding went down by 3.7, I think, million. So I share my fellow trustees' concern about 2024-2025 budget, especially if we don't get stabilization money. And I do agree. I think it's important that we as a board see if we can sit down and have a meeting with the minister, or at least our superintendent, to have that conversation about today's dollars, today's kids. What if we have lots of kids and no money? Stacey?
Thank you, Stacey Bugo, Ward 5. Sorry to keep this going on. I just wanted to mention, as you're saying this, I know that at ASBA, there will be a position statement coming forward about this reserve cap, and the way that the reserve cap may have been maybe useful in the past when it was today's dollars, today's kids, so that you couldn't sit on too much money. But now with the weighting moving average, it's essential that school boards have enough money in there to actually function going forward. And so I think that this is a really big problem that has been created with the combination of the reserve cap and the weighted moving average. And at the ASBA spring general meeting next week, I think that's going to be a hot topic. And I really hope that some of those position statements get pushed through and are very strongly communicated, because I'm not sure. I'm assuming that the current government is wanting us to put in those reserve mitigation strategies and use up our reserves. But then how are they going to support us going forward? Because it sounds like it's just going to be more grants thrown out unbudgeted, which is helpful, but it's not fantastic for our process. So thank you for explaining this all so that I can better articulate it when I'm at those tables as well. So I appreciate the transparency and going through all of this with us. Thank you.
Lilian?
I would like to also mention that we have addressed our concern in the letter to the minister. For the last 4 years, we have not been able to plan for more than 1 year at a time. We don't have any certainty of what's happening the following year, and we're going through the same motions every year. And it's very hard to plan long term. plan for cuts or additions of staff when you don't know what's going to happen in the following year. So we've added this to our letter. We hope that this message is communicated by many divisions, and our minister sees our dilemma we have to work with.
Trish?
Trish Marie Elliott, Ward 4. Sorry, are we going through this other document as well? Okay, then I have a question on the reserves. It looks like this upcoming budget 23-24 includes taking out of reserves the 600,000 that we were holding aside for legal purposes and moving that into operating reserves at the end of the year.
Liliana?
Thank you, Trustee Marie Elliott. I would like to remind you that 3 years ago, we wrote to the minister a letter asking permission to put set money aside for our lagoon litigation. And the money we took were from instructional dollars and put them aside into an operating reserves under system administration. As we learned the developments under this litigation process, we don't anticipate that we will be required to access those 600,000. And as a result, we moved the $600,000 back into instruction. And it's part of the reserves strategy mitigation going forward.
Thank you.
Joe?
Joe Dwyer, Ward 3. I just want to echo what a lot of people say, but I just want to say it. I have a huge problem with stability here and going forward, and it actually scares me. Hopefully, whoever gets elected can bring some stability to this, but it does scare me. So.
Thank you. I have one last thing to point out, and that's just same as Trustee Briggs, the IMR and the CMR. Our deferred maintenance went up 9 million in a year, and our funding dropped by 34%. So that's something else we might have to look at for advocating for us. And I know we're not the only school division. So. Joe?
Joe Dwyer, Ward 3. I just want to echo that too. I mean, we have a huge percentage of aged facilities in our division, and they're still not seeing the need for maintaining them. So we truly need to ask our government of the day or tomorrow, what is their strategy here? Like, when you're not replacing old buildings, but you're not also allowing you to maintain them, what is your strategy? And we need to put that in place very hard. So hopefully we do that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Janine?
Janine Pequin, Ward 1. My last comment, it's not really a question, is we've changed the process this year, and we previously used to approve our transportation fees in its own motion in March, April. And this year it is part of the actual budget process. So I really appreciate this slide because we've talked a lot about transportation this year. And I know I've talked a lot about it at my parent councils about what to do. And with the extra government funding, I'm just really proud of us as a board that we are able to lower those transportation fees, like Trustee Briggs said. And I just, this is a little win for our parents and for our community. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that before we pass this whole thing. And because it was a change that we used to talk about it in its own motion and we're not anymore. So just wanted to sing our praises a little bit.
Cindy?
Going back to the deferred maintenance, hot topic at this table. The 58 million deferred maintenance has a huge impact on rural education, simply because we can't just go to another school in our community. So we really need to advocate at this table for rural education, because if we can't afford to look after our schools, eventually our schools will not be repairable and they will have to close. So it's a huge issue that we really need to advocate for rural education.
Tasha?
So I'm going to take a different approach here. So our government in 2019, when they came in and they gave us a new stabilized funding model, and they then implemented all of the changes to cap reserve and envelope budgeting. I think that their intention was good at the time, but unlike decisions made at this table, we always, I mean, we consider unintended consequences almost to a fault. Sometimes our meetings can go for hours because we're talking about unintended consequences. But I think that it's important to note that that's what we're dealing with here. The government made changes with good intentions, but the unintended consequences of their decisions weren't maybe pondered enough like we do. And so I think that's the point of advocacy that we need to make. Thank you for the changes and the money. However, did you consider this at the time? Because right now we're in a big old puddle of unintended consequences here. So I guess I'm saying thank you to the government, but they need to take some direction from us on how to evaluate those unintended consequences.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for this great discussion. Can I please have a motion? Stacy?
Stacy Bugo, Ward 5. I motion that the Board of Trustees approve the 2023-2024 budget as presented at the May 24th, 2023 Public Board meeting.
Any questions on the motion or debate on the motion? Okay, I'm calling for the vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Do we want to take a 10-minute break or a 5-minute break? 10? Okay, we're taking a 10-minute wellness break. Welcome back to everybody online. We will carry on now with 10.2 Sturgeon Public Schools Draft Education Plan. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. Administration is excited to request approval through motion of our coming year's education plan. I want to remind the board that the education plan captures our key priority, student optimal learning or optimal learning for our students, and is organized around outcomes. They are illustrative states that say we're going to meet that key priority, and then the strategies we're going to use to get to those outcomes. Also remind the board that it is based first and mostly on the AERR, the 2022 AERR that came out to the board in November. Having said that, we have done some engagements that we will report fully in the next AERR in November. But we have aligned when we see trends and important things coming forward, for example, in the parent engagement. And to those online and the trustees here, there is a summary before you on the parent engagement. I'm not walking through that whole engagement, but it is an early summary of the top things that are in strong agreement that we're doing, things that we need to improve on, and some ideas on how to do that. For those online, that summary is captured or will be on our website under stakeholder engagement feedback. And we certainly thank our parents for taking the time to engage with us that way, to share their insights and where we're doing well and how we can improve. And I know many have picked that up, and that's great, but I'll just remind you that the core of the Ed Plan is based on the 2022 results, because we do not have the AEAM, the Alberta Education Assurance Measures yet. We don't have full analysis of our R-School. We don't have full analysis of our staff engagement. So that all goes into the next year's AERR. So that's just a reminder of how the process is. I'm going to walk through the plan to help capture or to highlight the plan before you. I also want to thank all the people online and certainly because I see it's a number of Sturgeon folk, and I would say, this is absolutely a team effort. I just want you to know that all central supports like learning services and education planning have given some thoughts and feedback here. And I want to thank the Board of Trustees, who this year we tried a new approach to ask for your feedback during the draft stage. And I want to thank trustees that took the time to read through that and provide ideas on where we could improve. So thank you. Moving into the plan itself, there's a message from yourselves about the work that we're doing together, a required accountability statement that is part of outlined in the funding manual, and then talk about, what our division is and what it's founded on. So here is our mission, vision, values, which we're proud of. And then a bit of insight into our division in terms of academies. And we have quite a few innovative academies going forward. And that, we're the largest employer. We're proud of being rural public schools, and our growth is positive. When I move forward to this measures and stakeholder voice, this aligns with my intro comments, which is, this is how we go to our stakeholders. We go to our parents, we go to our students, we also go to our staff, and the provincial ones are the ones that are required, that all divisions do. And then the local ones are ones we choose to engage in at different points during the year to help us get a better sense of where we're going. This plan is aligned to the Education Ministry's business plan, where you see outcome for success and strong teachers, that our First Nation, Métis, Inuit students are successful, and that our system is well governed. You'll see some alignment later in page 9 on how our plan and outcomes aligns with that. Ahead of that, though, a bit about how this plan is organized. It's organized around the Alberta education concept of assurance. Assurance is when we, through actions, reach states that our public can see and hear and understand, And when they do see students achieving, when they do see teachers getting together and working in groups to better their classrooms, when they do have opportunity as parents to contribute through school councils, then they reach that state of we're assured. We see the work you're doing and we have the assurance that you're committed to it. I already outlined how, the outcomes are what we're going to achieve. How are we going to achieve them? Through the strategies outlined here. And how do we know we've achieved them? I've just outlined the measures that we are paying attention to say, have we achieved or do we need to modify our plan? The summary on page 9 is obviously repeated throughout the plan, all of the outcomes that we want, but it shows an alignment with the Alberta Education Business Plan and is a nice summary page to kind of capture the 14 outcomes we're striving to achieve. As I move into the first domain, I should, I guess, highlight for those online and remind the trustees, you'll see it in the organization of the structure, but we have the 5 assurance domains, sorry. Student achievement, student growth and achievement, teaching and leading, governance, local and societal context. Oh, and I missed learning supports in the order it's in the document. Where I was going here is I start into the first domain of student growth and achievement. You'll see a change in this year's plan versus last year's plan. Last year's plan is that was the first time we'd done a plan separate from the AERR. We kept all of our data in the AERR, and in the plan, we said, please read our AERR because we presented all this data. In some feedback with the government, and I think in a way that can help illustrate some key drivers of data, we have selected some of the data to be presented here within each domain. We feel this data is illustrative of the need for growth. Challenge with that is it's not all the data, so please do consider the AERR, but know that this data here is some of the key drivers within this domain of why some of the strategies are in place. We feel we need to address. And also, because it's all growth data, we have captured quotes from recent staff or recent parent surveys that also celebrate some of the good work that we're doing. If you wonder why the call out quotes are more celebratory, because the data here is data that we need to grow on. We believe we need to address. So coming here into student growth and achievement, our outcomes I may summarize as the first one is that students will achieve or are achieving provincial learning outcomes, specifically demonstrating strength in literacy and numeracy within the context of real world problems. We also will have students demonstrating citizenship and respect for the uniqueness of learners. And our First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students will experience academic achievement at rates comparable to non-Indigenous peers. To get to these outcomes, you can see the strategies that our teams have articulated and are sharing with schools as they make their ed plans, because that is the next step. As we outline this, these are the broader strategies that schools will unpack into more specific in-school strategies. Then as you see the implementation, these are some of the next year highlights of what we're committed to doing. What I mean by that is if I look at one of the strategies here about having teachers and learning coaches, the third strategy, I'm just going to use this as an example. Teachers, learning coaches, and division leaders will leverage classroom-based evidence to develop learning environments rich in evidence-based literacy and numeracy instruction across subjects and grade levels. Then if we were to go down in here, you can see that we talk about the frameworks we're designing in paragraph 2. And then we go further to talk about how, in early literacy programming, we're doing phonetic awareness, decodable, and then we're also doing leveled reading. And then when it talks about numeracy, we are specifically looking at visible thinking in classrooms and fact fluency, certainly in earlier grades and continuing to mid-level grades. So we're looking at those two approaches heading into next year. So that's an illustration. And so what we anticipate is this strategy aligned with the goal of having students demonstrating strength in literacy and numeracy will continue year over year, unless something tells us that's totally the wrong strategy. But what might happen is this year we're focusing on Graham Fletcher's work on fact fluency. Next year, likely we will as well, but maybe 2 years from now, there might be a difference in the specific call out in the implementation, whereas the strategy to have literate and numerate students would continue. I'm trying to just use that as an example so the board can understand how this plan is laid out the way it is. Moving into teaching and leading. You know, this is an area when we talk about how we are growing and developing our teachers and our instructional leaders. So that could be anybody from instructional coaches to vice principals to principals and even central office staff. And I'll just say in this domain, we believe our public will be assured that we have excellent teachers and leaders if we have continuous leadership development that is prioritized across the division. That's outcome 4. Outcome 5, that teachers and leaders believe in their ability to impact student learning, plan effectively, and design inclusive learning environments. And the other outcome in this domain, outcome 6, that teachers and leaders use a range of data to implement effective assessment and evaluation practices. These outcomes are a continuation, except outcome 5 is actually a new outcome for us as a division. Not a new, we've said this out loud before, but I want to draw the board's attention to this. When we look at research in terms of moving staff forward and from moving staff forward, improving student learning, one of the greatest impacts on student success is called teacher efficacy. If you haven't heard that before, I'm just going to unpack it just briefly. Teacher efficacy is the core belief, backed by data, backed by reason, not just I woke up this morning and I believe this, that I know I make a difference in the educational success of the students that I'm working with. And so you'll see this outcome called out where teachers and leaders believe in their ability. So we're going to work on that belief. How we're going to do that. You'll see a bullet at the bottom, page 13, that when we have successful experiences by students that we link to the work that teachers and leaders are doing, we will celebrate and share those experiences. And by calling it out and linking it back to, we got together as grade 3 math teachers, we looked at fact fluency, we used Graham Fletcher's work, we started with this pre-test, 2 months later, we looked at this post-test, we saw the improvement in our students, and we are making a commitment to calling that out because we know that then teachers will go, we can do this, we're making a difference. Is that, sorry, I'm just looking for a little head nod, that's teacher efficacy. So again, I'm not reading through this plan. I know you have, and I encourage everyone online to do so as it captures a little more life what we're going forward. I guess I should call out the first paragraph about, yes, it is good, the first paragraph of just the different ways we are developing leadership. When we talk about succession planning, and when we talk about changes in leadership, we have leaders that have opportunities to grow and go elsewhere. And as we bring in new people, how are we ensuring that right from below, we are saying here in Sturgeon, we want you to grow and we want your professional learning to be aligned with, and we want opportunities to be available for leadership within your school and then across schools. And so that paragraph there talks about our work with beginning teachers and then our work with learning coaches, which we see as elbow partner leaders. They don't have authority leadership in other teachers, but they have leadership in terms of practice of good teaching. Then we have a Sturgeon Aspiring Leadership Team, that SALT group. They usually come in for 2 years. I'm sure we could make exception if we want them to be 3, but they come in for a couple of years where we work through what could be the next step in a more formalized leadership in education. Then we already have formalized leaders in our vice principals. So we have specific cohort and learning that works with them. And we have formalized leadership in our principals, and we meet every month in addition to other leadership opportunities. We plan special events or activities to grow their leadership in addition to the every month professional learning we do on every second Wednesday. Now I feel I can move on. I'm glad I called that out. So moving to the domain of learning supports, I actually need to make an apology. At the top of page 16, the assurance paragraph, and I will read it to you how I would like to make an amendment. So we have to be careful when we make this motion. The assurance paragraph should actually read, public assurance occurs when all students belong and learn in environments that support their needs. Public confidence is built when system resources are used to ensure optimum learning for all. And it is my apologies. It was my mistake that I was editing as in the Google Doc that you have seen. And then when we moved into a more visual platform, the paragraph was miscopied. So the top of page 16 should read as I indicated. My apologies.
Sorry, that was learning supports.
Yes.
Okay, thank
The
you.
top of page 16, learning supports assurance paragraph. Will be updated to reflect the draft that the trustees have seen already. It's not a new paragraph. It's just was copied incorrectly. My apologies. So as I work through here, I'd like to highlight in the outcomes, you'll see public school communities are safe, caring, respectful, and inclusive. Mental health supports are recognized as critical components to student success and well-being. And students achieve within communities committed to truth and reconciliation with understanding of foundational Indigenous knowledge. We adjusted the outcome slightly this year in the fashion you see here for two reasons. One, really wanted to focus that we need the mental health supports. We believe they are absolutely critical for the success of all of our students in our schools. And when we reworded the one for that all students achieve, we wanted to acknowledge that all students will achieve the goal of understanding Indigenous foundational knowledge when we're all committed to it. Before it was written more about Indigenous students succeed with this, and this is just a call out to understand we are all part of that journey and understanding Indigenous foundational knowledge. So that's the rewrite on that outcome. I think what I would call out, I mean, it's all fantastic and needs to be shouted out because it's great work that our learning services team works with our schools on. But I did want to call out the way we're working into positive behavior supports and related to that and trauma-informed practices, therapeutic crisis intervention model that is taking is such a supportive approach to understanding dysregulated students and the challenges that are going around in that student's life to better understand, as opposed to a reactionary model to behavior supports. I suggest from all of our engagements and from other triangulated data right now, we need this level of, it's very significant to ensure that our leaders are trained in this. It's a 5-day training, that we have additional leadership in our schools, again, 5-day training, and then they will train all of the people that work with students that need this extra support. And those people, we're talking educational assistants and people that are on the ground, will also participate in a 5-day training. So this is not a singular event. This will take time to roll off across our division, but it is designed to give our people skills and understanding to work with the significant behavior and challenges that they are facing within their classrooms today. So I just want to call that out because that is, it's part of our budget mitigation strategy. We've been planning for this. It is a multi-year rollout, but I just want to call that out as additional heavy lifting that this team is supporting in our schools. And because of the outcome related to all students succeeding in a division committed to understanding Indigenous knowledge, we are calling out some of the success that our Indigenous education team is doing. And I please encourage, I know you've read it, but I'm just saying online, if you have not, to read through this, I'm very excited at the work the team is doing, that the work is twofold. Going in and ensuring all of our students have experiential understanding. We're talking blanket exercise, TP teaching, outdoor learning experiences where we invite elder or knowledge keeper to walk alongside us or to teach us directly. We're very thankful for those experiences. We also have staff in place that are dedicated to the success of Indigenous students. They're called in these paragraphs. Those student success coaches and the Indigenous student coach and the EAs that are in schools doing direct work with Indigenous students are working here in this domain because it creates a more inclusive school, safe school, but they're also working in that first domain to reduce the achievement gap that we see between Indigenous students and non-Indigenous students. And very much on the student success coaches that we have in high schools. Moving on to the domain of governance, here we will be assured, or that not we, public is assured, when we're all working together to focus on the achievement of students and that we demonstrate stewardship of system resources. In this area, the outcomes are students, families, staff, and community are committed to a shared vision for optimal learning with opportunities for all to be involved, and that resources are allocated and managed in the interest of ensuring student success. Right related to that is actually how this plan comes apart, which is we are committed to engaging our stakeholders, formally through provincial, locally through the local measures that you saw. And even though it wasn't called out there, I would absolutely say through parental involvement in terms of school council, all the parent events that you have been hearing about lately. We've been sharing that far and wide this year and want to continue doing that with understanding online safety or internet safety for parents. I believe that we will only achieve that unity of vision for optimal learning if we are engaged with our parents in as many times as we can. Moving to the domain of local and society context, it's actually a very related domain because in governance, we are well managed and engaged with our stakeholders to ensure that we are aligned. With local and societal context, it goes an additional layer and says, are we connected to our communities? So the outcomes there are that students will demonstrate respect for themselves and others and show pride in their accomplishments and their community. Schools implement student volunteer opportunities in their communities and engage participation in division-wide events. And partnerships with external agencies are in place and used to enhance the conditions required for student achievement. We have heard through every layer of engagement that our communities are assured we are doing good work when our kids are in our communities. So they have asked that we continue to seek, yes, volunteer, that's called out in the plan, but in addition that we ensure we're doing work experience placements, that we have more meaningful RAP placements in our communities, because this is how our kids are connected, stay connected, see themselves connected into our communities. Students themselves have said, we also want to make sure we're connected across schools. We're looking for opportunities. We do it well in sport. We do it well at the Sturgeon Night of Fine Arts and Music. Are there other clubs, activities, and ideas that will get schools connected with schools? So we have that sense of being Sturgeon. So that is one of the loudest things that has come from students in the last year or so, year and a half, and it's exciting. And we're trying to capture that here in the plan. I will also say our partnerships that go on in the page 24 and 25 are really exciting. They really do demonstrate the different ways that we are connected with local and provincial, some exciting research, and our neighbors at Kopotuka Education Center, Alexander. And I really believe this is a result of the board being committed to reestablishing connections with our partners and our schools wanting to make sure that we are doing the best for students by leveraging any expertise or partnerships that we have. I know that was a broad walkthrough. It's a 25-page document, but I invite any questions or comments that you may have at this time.
Stacy.
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. Couple of comments. First, I really appreciated having this document available for us to comment on our own time instead of having to bring it to a committee of the whole where we can actually sit through it and read back and forth and make our comments, because I appreciated being involved in this process. Because what we do at this table, we want it to be seen at all levels. That's our role. And I think this was a really great format, as I haven't done this often, but I appreciated that. I just wanted to note with that teacher efficacy being the biggest indicator of how students succeed. I heard that as well from first year teachers going through the Edwin Parr nominees, is that first year teachers want trustees in particular, because we asked them a question on how the board can do better. And for a first year teacher to understand the role of the board is challenging for sure. But they all said they want trustees to come and see them work. They want trustees to see how good they're doing. And so they really do need to hear from all levels that they are affecting student outcomes. So when we see reports and data saying our students are succeeding, we at the board level need to make sure that we're also telling our teachers, you did great. Because I think that's all connected and at multiple levels, because our results need to be reflective of our teachers and really share those positives with our teachers from the governance level as well, because I think we don't want that disconnect, because that's, I think, adds to teacher efficacy. And I also really appreciate that through particularly those partnerships on the last pages, it shows that we are providing supports for all levels of students in all directions, whether they are succeeding and needing, support to meet their academic dreams, and they are, going well above and beyond, or the ones that need a little bit more support just to get caught up. We have supports in all directions, and I think that's really positive. And this is a great way for us to share with our stakeholders when we hear complaints, because that's a lot of what we hear, is that no, we are doing amazing things, and really to evidence that. So I appreciate this report. That's what I'm saying.
Tasha.
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward 6. I want to continue on Trustee Buga's words, and just first, thank you to you and your team. This is a huge undertaking, collecting all of the stakeholder data and then turning it into something that makes sense. But more specifically, the actual collecting of the data. When we first started Student Voice, we weren't really sure where that was gonna lead us. We knew it was important, but we didn't really know how we were going to utilize the information. And I think that you and the team have taken Student Voice and encapsulated it perfectly here. And all the surveys that we do, and during a time of survey fatigue amongst our parents and staff, to be able to gather this much information and turn it into something as digestible as what you've presented, that is no small feat. And I just want to say, like, kudos to you and the team. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for presenting it. And I just hope we can continue to do this and keep it sustainable, because it's really valuable when it comes out like this. So thanks.
Cindy?
Student outcomes are directly related to who is standing and working with our students in the classroom. And so thank you for the learning services team for providing the right people for the right places for our diverse needs across the division. And also thank you for having the outcomes for the students on where they are and not where we expect them to be. So thank you for your support.
Janine?
Janine Feckman, Ward 1. I kind of just want to build on Tasha. We built student advisory not really knowing. So to see that what it's morphed into and that they're actually captured in this document, A, is huge. B, I would like to share it back with them at our next meetings next year to say, like, we are listening and we are, you are engaged in our 3-year plan. Second point, and I don't know, I really love the Inspire system with Jesse's house, and that's not a partnership we have in here. And as I would love to see that expanded, I would like to see a call out, because I think they did some really, really great work with our kids this year as a pilot project. And based on stories, like, they made a huge difference in those kiddos' lives. So I wouldn't mind seeing a call out, and I'm sorry that I didn't catch it in the first read through.
Okay, sorry, I'm writing. So I just have a couple things. One, I'm really excited about the teaching and learning outcome. And looking forward to the increase in grade 10 students indicating that my schoolwork is interesting. And the simple fact how we sought staff appreciation, how many new teachers we had within the division. And we want to be able to retain those teachers and not have them tap out of teaching completely or leave our division because they don't feel they're not getting what they need. And I love the building capacity in leaders. And then the other thing is with the Indigenous Ed. So First Nation, Métis, and Inuit has been a priority from Alberta Ed. It's been a priority for us. I love to see how it has flowed through this report. I want to commend the team with the collaboration with Alexander First Nation, and that has come from the top down. You've made great strides and great inroads to bringing our students together with their students and that learning. So thank you for that. I didn't see it in that report. So I'm kudos to you. And does anybody have any other discussion on this one before we move to the motion? Janine?
I don't know if this is appropriate or not. It's not appropriate. So when we first started on the board, we talked about we had a presentation before last board about the neurosequential model in education. And then we've kind of moved into the positive behavior supports. And now it seems like we're kind of going into the therapeutic crisis intervention. Can you, I don't know, explain how that works, how we kind of keep moving from model to model? Is that based on best practices? Is that based on new data? Are we pilot projecting? Because I know the TCI is significant cost to us. Like, how do we choose what theory to go with?
Shauna?
Shauna Warren, Superintendent, thank you. And Mr. Conrad can add in anything that I miss. And so if the board remembers, then we will be bringing this back to you when Learning Services, and again, your Archer will keep bringing them forward, is when I was first named acting, and we're still building with it. In fact, the Ed Services team, we've got a brainstorming. We just had a huge brainstorming afternoon to look at this. So first of all, the complexity of our classrooms. It is a brand new line that has showed up in our funding profile, all school divisions in the province. It's a brand new line, which means that Alberta Education is actually acknowledging that the complexity of our classrooms is something that we've never seen before. As somebody who's been in education for 31 years now, it is true. What we see in our classrooms is something we've never seen before. And the board, any of you who are around when we started the neurosequential model in education work, it was a long process too. So what we have done with TCI, and I'll just remind the board, when this was first brought to you, this would have been about 17 months ago that we were looking at this actually at the budget approval, because it was part of our reserve mitigation strategy last year that was submitted. The reason we look to the TCI model, which is actually run in some of our institutional schools, not ours, but across the province, but Oak Hill, they actually use this program. So what we were looking at, so positive everything, collaborative problem solving, positive behavior supports, our neurosequential model in education, zones of regulation, I could go on. All of these tools are amazing, either theory-based or they can be action-based things that we've used in schools to basically meet the needs of school children who are struggling to be regulated, who are not ready to be learned. Because guess what our job is? You know, if kids aren't fed, if they're not regulated, if things are happening at home, they're not ready to learn. Won't matter what you do. Won't matter how I stand in front of them as a teacher, that if they're actually don't have what they need to be ready to learn, they won't learn. And so these are things we've been doing in education for years. And the TCI is intensive, and it is the umbrella that we chose to initiate, like I said, 17 months ago to bring forward to the board and put as part of our reserve mitigation strategy. And we actually have a 7, if we start from last year, 6, 7-year strategy moving forward, again, was included last year in the board in the reserve mitigation, was that we use the TCI model as the umbrella to bring everything else we've been doing over the years together. Because as you know, what we've been talking about the most is building capacity. And as someone who was part of the NME, it was disheartening when we first started unpacking this as to why we spent so much time and effort in NME, and why wasn't it more ingrained in our schools, and how come we didn't manage to build the capacity? Because it's the skill set of our staff working with children, and why were we not building capacity? So we're still digging through that. So we're taking all of our learnings from even through NME, because it was a long process. It was 5 years. It was very intentional. It was a lot of dollars that were invested. We still have some of those experts, and many of them are online right now that lived through that training. So we're trying to take all that now through the TCI. We're trying to bring as many brains and experts together in the division to go, okay, so we've done these things and now we need the umbrella. And that was part of last year when we brought forward the Sturgeon Student Foundation support, is how are we bringing all of those things together so we actually can get kids ready to learn and meet them where they're at. So TCI is the umbrella, and it's expensive. And we are really working hard to make sure that we are learning from the past so that we actually build the capacity so that when people leave, the knowledge doesn't leave. And that's also something else, as you know, as you get turnover in people and succession planning, building capacity. We've truly been working on that. And you can see, as I presented to the board in my evaluation also, that I'll be bringing forward, starting from leadership down, our professional development, everything we do has to tie back to that, the vision, mission, and values, who we are, and then how do we put the framework in place so we build capacity. That is our goal. It's heavy lifting, and we will continue to bring more information so that you truly understand how we're doing this. Just like, as you see in that, our job by the government, that big word is assurance. And we have to assure all stakeholders that we are doing our job, and that includes you as the board. And so we still have heavy lifting as we bring forward, so you truly understand how we're moving forward with this, and we will continue to do so. And most of the people that will be gathering that data online anyway, so they can hear this said out loud.
Any further discussion or questions? Can I get a motion? Cindy?
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the draft Sturgeon Public School Division Education Plan for 23 to 26 as presented at the May 24th, 2023 public board meeting.
Can I make an amendment? In the amendment, I would like to add that the changes be made in the education plan that has been presented under the domain learning supports, the assurance statement to state what was presented verbally by Jonathan Conrad into the final document, and adding Jesse's House as a partner. Any questions, debate? Sean?
Could I just ask for the board chair to consider it instead of Jesse's House, that it's the Inspire program?
Yes. Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carried. Okay, we will move on to 10.3, 2023-24 Council of School Councils meeting. Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. Administration is seeking approval through motion on on a proposal of 2 dates for the Council of School Councils next year. It was the direction of the board to get these dates out as early as possible. What went into finding these dates, considering these dates, was a review of the evenings that schools had school councils on, which makes Mondays and Tuesdays almost right out, except for one Tuesday a month, which is the first one. Creates a little more interest in doing Wednesday or Thursday, if you're wondering about that. And then the other thing we wanted to avoid was parent-teacher interview nights. And so before you are two dates that meet that criteria of avoiding those things. So we are proposing a date in Wednesday, on Wednesday, November 15th, and then a date in March, Thursday, March 7th, for your consideration. Admin is prepared to take more questions or conversation on this before the motion.
Any questions? Can I get a motion? Tasha?
Tasha Owen McClay, Ward 6. I move that the Board of Trustees approve the 23-24 Council of School Councils meetings that will take place in person on Wednesday, November 15th, 2023, and Thursday, March 7th, 2024.
Any questions or debate? Cindy?
Location to be determined.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I indicated that, sorry, administration will bring in fall a further request for approval through motion, format, refreshment type, location.
Did you want to add that as an amendment? Okay. Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. 10.4 Superintendent Evaluation Report. Okay, that's me. So we attended the May 8th student Superintendent Evaluation Day with Chris Smeaton. It had been an 18-month report or evaluation based on the Superintendent Learning Standard quality standards. It's important to keep in mind that the Superintendent Evaluation Report is intended solely for the use of the Sturgeon Public School Board of Trustees and will not be shared publicly as it contains information related to the evaluation of employees' performance. Does anybody have any questions? Cindy?
I don't have a question. I do have a comment on how important this is for the board to participate in this evaluation. It was a wonderful learning experience, I think, for both parties. And it is very important that every board does this. And it creates transparency, and it, like I said, it was a great experience.
The one other thing that I'd like to mention too, before moving forward to the motion, is that we need to discuss as a board going forward, because it was very labor intensive on our superintendent. And I believe the policy says formal every second year. So we'll have to have discussions at the next CAL, possibly on going forward on what the informal process is going to be. Can I get someone to motion? Janine.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the Superintendent's Evaluation Report as developed in the evaluation workshop of May 8th, 2023 as an accurate accounting of the superintendent's performance for the period of November 4th, 2021 to May 1st, 2023. And further, that the Board of Trustees authorizes the board chair to make any required technical edits and sign the report on the board's behalf.
Any questions or debate on the motion? Stacy?
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. Just for, out of curiosity, do we get a copy of the signed report once it is submitted, just for our review, or will we see that in camera just to clarify any board chair edits that have been made?
So it will be, a copy is given to our superintendent, and then a copy is given to our HR department. So you can book an appointment with Lisa to review that document. Joe?
It's a typo.
That's what I thought.
Strictly a typo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Cindy?
Will the board be notified of any technical edits, just so we know if there has been any changes?
Yes. Any other questions or debate? Okay, I'm calling for the vote. All in favor? Motion carried. That moves us all the way along down to 14.1. I don't know, do we have anybody on there online from ATA? No. Sherry, are you on there? No? Any QP? Don't know if Kelly's on there. I do see Jace is joining us. Jace, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, thank you for having me again. First of all, I'm very thrilled. I, as many students around the division are, we're very thrilled to hear that feedback from our student advocacy meetings do make it to our trustees and higher administration and stuff like that. It's very rewarding to feel that our feedback is heard and is implemented into future plans and stuff like that. So we thank you guys on your part for ensuring that that does happen. Recently, we had our final SPS student advocacy meeting of the year. It was enjoyable, got to see some familiar faces again from around the division. We re-explored some ideas and continued to work on ideas that have been mentioned in today's board meeting already of inter-school collaboration and stuff like that. What we can do as a division to see that students and our personnel from across the division get to work together on various activities and group orientated projects and stuff like that. We also had our portion in our meeting based around what is the Sturgeon Public School experience. And we got some feedback from students on what in their minds do they attribute to such an experience. When you think of SPS, what really screams our division to them. And quite dominantly, the feedback came back as sports. Students love that our division is quite heavily based on sports. It's valued. Physical activity is valued in our division. Students, it has been heard that many students are easily able to access sports, whether it be volleyball, badminton, and especially at the junior high level, we have some activities that support inter-school engagement in that regard already, such as badminton and volleyball all-star competitions and stuff like that. So that has been great to hear from students. And given that knowledge, we also work together as a group to see what we can do going forward, which is, as mentioned in our 23 to 26 draft education plan that was mentioned earlier, see what we can do to continue working in the direction of increasing inter-school collaboration and engagement. And perhaps there are clubs or extracurricular activities or group involvement that we can continue to work towards collaborating with other schools on and seeing what we can do to influence a greater engagement in that regard. Then we also had a portion where we talked about supporting school and grade transitions, and we got some really great feedback from students on that I'm sure, if not already at some point, the trustees will have heard some of that feedback from. If you weren't at that meeting already, thank you for coming. And speaking of sports, we also have next week on Tuesday, our junior high from across the division will be meeting at Redwater School to have their junior high track meet, and our high school students are happy to be running that again after years of doing so. So thank you. I look forward to my final meeting, although unfortunate, next month. And I really appreciate the opportunity that the board and administration has provided student voice with over the last couple of years. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for James? Tasha?
Not a question, but sincere gratitude to you for being a phenomenal leader, for making the amazing contributions to this program that you have. This was I don't want to say it was just mine and Janine's, but we're the only ones left here at the table. But this was mine and Janine's. This was our baby. And thank you to your contributions for taking it to that next level. I wish you nothing but the best in the future. I know you're going to do amazing things, and I hope you bring it back to our communities.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jace, and wish you all the best. Is there anybody online that has any questions? Okay. Can I get a motion to move us in camera? Tasha?
Tasha Owe-McClay, Ward 6. I move to have the meeting go in camera.
All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thank you for everybody that's online. We're going to be going in camera now.